The ship was a wreck. At least, that's what the auctioneer said. Paint peeling, hull scarred from micrometeorite impacts, and an AI core wiped cleaner than a soldier's conscience. For Captain Elias Rourke, it was perfect. A man like him didn't need luxury or aesthetics. Just a vessel to drift between the outer colonies, scavenging what little the universe hadn't already claimed. But as his boots echoed down the silent corridors, a strange unease settled in his chest. This ship wasn't empty. There were faint traces of someone or something. A discarded ration wrapper near the engine room. Scuffed deck plates leading toward the maintenance bays. And then that sound. A soft, almost melodic humming. Delicate, alien, impossible. It rose and fell like a lullaby, the kind a mother might whisper to soothe a frightened child. Rourke froze. His hand instinctively went to the plasma pistol at his side. The auction papers had listed this vessel as decommissioned after structural failure. No mention of survivors. No mention of stowaways. Great, he muttered under his breath, eyes scanning the shadows. Just my damn luck. I buy a junk heap and get a ghost thrown in for free. But ghosts don't leave half-eaten protein bars. Ghosts don't hum lullabies. As the sound echoed again, this time closer, Elias realized something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. And he was about to find out that in the cold, indifferent void of space, even a hardened human could stumble upon a secret worth dying for or living to protect. The auctioneer's voice crackled through static-filled speakers, echoing across the dusty hangar bay. Lot number 743. Decommissioned freighter. Model KX-11. Sold as is. No warranties, no returns. Starting bid, 12,000 credits. Most of the crowd didn't even look up. The ship was a rusting hulk parked awkwardly at the far end of the dock, its hull marred with deep scoring from asteroid shrapnel. A faded nameplate barely clung to the side, the astral veil. Elias Rourke stood with his arms crossed, a permanent scowl etched into his face. His coat, once military issue, was frayed at the edges, but the posture underneath spoke of discipline, even after years away from the battlefield. 12,000, he said flatly. A few heads turned. Someone in the crowd snorted. The auctioneer raised a skeptical brow. Very well. 12,000 credits to the gentleman in the back. Any competing bids? Silence. Elias had expected as much. Nobody sane wanted a ship that had been declared deadweight by 3 major scrapyards. It wasn't worth the effort to strip it for parts, let alone to fly it. But Elias wasn't here for sanity. He was here because the Veil was cheap, anonymous, and, most importantly, space-worthy enough to drift from colony to colony without attracting attention. Sold. The auctioneer slammed the gavel. To Captain... Doesn't matter, Elias muttered, already turning toward the docking bridge. The airlock hissed as he stepped aboard. The scent hit him first, not the sterile tang of ozone, like on military vessels, or the recycled air of newer freighters. No, this smelled of stale food, unwashed fabric, and something subtler. Fear? His boots clanged on the metal deck plates. Dust danced in the dim emergency lights as the ship's systems sputtered to life. Power's low, he muttered. Figures. The central corridor stretched ahead like a gaping throat, lined with flickering panels and empty crates. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the ship, a coolant line hissed in protest. He took a step and stopped. A faint sound, barely audible, over the groan of metal. A hum? No, a song, so soft it could almost be mistaken for the wind in the vents. It rose and fell in a haunting, alien cadence, strange vowels strung together in a lullaby. Elias's hand instinctively dropped to the plasma pistol strapped to his thigh. He wasn't alone. Great, he muttered. His voice echoed back, too loud in the silence. Just what I needed. A squatter. He moved cautiously, eyes scanning the shadows. In the galley, he found crumbs. Fresh. Not years-old ration dust, but actual crumbs. A protein bar wrapper lay crumpled on the counter, its expiration date barely a few weeks past. In the crew quarters, a cot had been dragged into the corner, a threadbare blanket curled up like a nest. Someone had been living here. Recently. Could be a scavenger, he whispered to himself. Could be worse. He reached the engine room hatch and froze again. Tiny footprints in the grime. 2 sets. One large, one small. His stomach tightened. Not a scavenger. A family? The humming started again, louder now. Elias activated the ship's AI interface, but was met with static. "Core's wiped," he growled. "Of course it is." The humming turned into words, foreign syllables that wrapped around his ears like silk. He couldn't understand them, but the intent was clear. Comfort, reassurance, a mother singing to her child. Elias felt something stir in his chest, something he'd long buried under years of war and loss. He hated it. "Enough," he growled. His voice echoed through the halls. "Who's there? Come out. Now. I won't ask twice." Silence. Then, a soft gasp. It came from behind a maintenance panel. One of the vents shifted slightly, as if someone inside had flinched. Elias's grip tightened on his pistol. He took a step forward, boots ringing out on the deck. Another step, and another. The panel creaked. A pair of eyes blinked at him through the narrow slit. Wide, luminous, and distinctly not human. His breath caught. Alien. And next to those eyes, a smaller set, peering out timidly from behind the larger figure. A mother and her child. For the first time in years, Elias felt fear prickle down his spine. This wasn't just a bad purchase. This was a choice. And in the cold black of space, choices had consequences. The 2 pairs of eyes didn't blink. Luminous and unearthly, they seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim glow of the emergency lights. The larger set was emerald green, flecked with streaks of gold that caught even the smallest flicker. The smaller pair, rounder, wide with fear, clung to the shadows like they were a second skin. Elias's grip on his pistol tightened. His breath came out slow and deliberate, fogging slightly in the cold air. "All right," he said in a low, measured voice. "You've got about 3 seconds to come out of there before I start tearing this panel off." No response. The eyes shifted, and he could hear the faint shuffle of bodies pressed against the cramped interior. Then a whisper, soft, melodic, utterly alien. It sounded almost like a prayer. Elias exhaled sharply through his nose. A mother shielding her young. He'd seen it before, on 100 burned-out colonies. Human or not, that part of life was universal. "Look," he said, forcing his voice to soften. "I'm not here to hurt you, but I am armed, and I'm not the patient type. So let's make this easy for both of us." Silence. Then, with agonizing slowness, the panel creaked open. She emerged first, slender and hunched from days or weeks in a confined space. Her form was unmistakably alien, yet hauntingly graceful. Silvery skin mottled with bruises stretched taut over a delicate frame. 2 thin ridges ran from her temples down the sides of her neck, pulsing faintly with bioluminescence. Her clothes were little more than rags now, clinging desperately to a body that had known too much running and not enough food. In her arms, she clutched the child. He or it couldn't have been more than 5 human years old by appearance. Same silvery skin, but his bioluminescent markings glowed brighter, flickering erratically with fear. He buried his face in her shoulder as she held him tight. Elias kept his pistol steady. "You're not supposed to be here." Her emerald eyes flicked to his weapon, then back to his face. "We have nowhere else," she said. Her voice was soft, the words accented but clear enough. "Please, do not turn us in." The air between them felt heavy. "You know what happens if someone finds you," Elias said. His tone was more neutral than accusatory, but the weight of truth hung on every syllable. "Yes," she whispered. "That is why we hide." He studied them. He remembered the war, how her kind had fought tooth and claw against humanity, how propaganda had painted them as monsters. But standing here, all he saw was a frightened mother and a child too small to even understand the danger. "Names," Elias said finally. Her arms tightened protectively around her son. "Name," he repeated, sharper this time. "Selira." A pause. Then she touched her son's back. "Kale." Elias nodded once. "Rourke. Captain Elias Rourke." He holstered his pistol. "I should report you," he said matter-of-factly, turning toward the cockpit. "There's a bounty on your kind, enough to get me a decent upgrade to this heap." Selira flinched, but didn't speak. "But," Elias continued, throwing a glance over his shoulder, "if I was going to turn you in, I'd have done it already." Selira's eyes widened slightly, but suspicion lingered in their depths. "Listen carefully," Elias said. "This ship isn't safe. Life support's running on fumes. You've been lucky so far, but another week in that vent, and you'd both have frozen or suffocated." She nodded slowly, still clutching Kale. "Get cleaned up," Elias said gruffly. "There's a medkit in the galley. Food, too. You look like hell." Her lips parted slightly, as if to thank him, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "Don't mistake this for kindness. I'm no saint. I'm just not in the mood to deal with screaming inspectors if they find two stowaways hiding in my ducts." But deep down, as he walked away, Elias knew that wasn't the full truth. In the cockpit, he sank into the pilot's chair and stared out at the endless void of stars. His reflection in the cracked viewport looked older than he remembered. "Damn it, Rourke," he muttered to himself. "What the hell are you doing?" Behind him, faintly, he could hear Selira whispering to Kale again in that strange, melodic language. And for the first time in years, the astral veil didn't feel quite so empty. The astral veil drifted in the void, its patched-together systems humming weakly as Elias sat in the galley. A half-eaten ration pack lay untouched on the table in front of him. Across the room, Selira knelt on the cold floor, tending to her son's bruised leg with trembling hands. The alien child winced, his faintly glowing markings pulsing erratically with pain. Elias watched in silence. He hated how human it looked, this scene. A mother caring for her child, the boy clutching at her tunic like he'd fall apart without her. It tugged at some part of him he thought he'd burned away long ago. Finally, he broke the quiet. "You need a better med patch. That one's cheap garbage." Selira froze. She turned to him cautiously, her emerald eyes studying his face. "Then why give it?" Elias leaned back in his chair. "Because it's what I had. Don't get any ideas. I'm not running a charity ship." "You're helping us," she said softly. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the viewport, where stars streaked slowly past. "Maybe I'm just tired," he muttered finally. "Tired of playing the villain in everyone's story." Selira tilted her head slightly, her glowing markings dimmed as she studied him. Not with fear now, but with a tentative, fragile curiosity. Kale, the boy, shuffled closer to Elias. Small hands clutched at the edge of the table as he peeked over, wide-eyed. "Kale," Selira warned gently, but Elias only raised an eyebrow. "Kid's curious. Let him be." Kale hesitated, then reached a tiny hand toward Elias's ration pack. Elias watched as the boy sniffed it cautiously, then wrinkled his nose. "Smart," Elias said dryly. "Tastes as bad as it smells." The boy's laugh was soft but real, a sound that startled Elias more than he cared to admit. He almost smiled before catching himself. The moment shattered with a sharp ping from the cockpit console. Elias stiffened instantly. "Stay here." He strode to the pilot's chair, fingers flying over the controls. A proximity alert flashed in angry red across the screen. UNSC Patrol Frigate, Halberd class. Identification, Vigilant Star. His gut twisted. A Halberd class meant trouble. They were notorious for random inspections, looking for contraband, unregistered passengers, or worse. "Damn it," he growled. A comm burst crackled to life. "Unregistered vessel Astral Veil. This is Captain Arden Vera of the UNSC Vigilant Star. Prepare for docking and inspection." Salira appeared in the doorway, Kale clutching her hand. Her face was pale. "What is it?" she asked. "Patrol ship," Elias said tersely. "They're coming aboard." Her bioluminescent markings flared with fear. "If they find us—" "They won't," Elias interrupted. Her eyes widened. "But—" "Listen to me." His voice was calm but firm. "Take the boy. Go back to the maintenance vents. Stay silent. No matter what happens. No sounds, no movement." Salira hesitated, clutching Kale tightly. "Why are you doing this?" Elias's jaw tightened. "Because if I don't, they'll space you both, before I can blink. And I don't want that on my conscience. Not again." Salira nodded silently and pulled Kale away. Elias exhaled hard, running a hand over his stubble. He switched the comm back on, his voice cool and professional. "Astral Veil here. Understood. Preparing for inspection." His eyes darted to the deck, plating near the vent Salira had used. Too obvious. He grabbed a loose cargo panel and began bolting it over the entrance, just in case. As the frigate's docking clamps engaged with a hollow thunk, Elias muttered under his breath, "Here's to bluffing my way out of another one." The airlock cycled open with a hiss, and armored boots clanged against the metal deck. 3 UNSC inspectors filed in, rifles slung but at the ready. "Captain Rourke," one of them said curtly, "this ship's logs are irregular. We'll need full access to all compartments." Elias leaned casually against the console, masking the knot in his stomach. "Be my guest," he said coolly. "Though if you find anything besides rust and bad memories, I'd be impressed." The lead inspector frowned but motioned for his team to fan out. As they swept the ship, Elias kept his breathing steady. Every second felt like a year. In the maintenance vent, Salira held Kale tight, her hand pressed over his mouth to stifle his whimpers. Her glowing markings dimmed to near nothing as she willed herself invisible. One of the inspectors passed within inches of their hiding place, his boots echoing loudly on the deck. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the lead inspector returned. "Ship's clear," he said reluctantly. "Apologies for the inconvenience, Captain." Elias forced a smirk. "No harm done. Just don't scratch my walls on the way out." They left as abruptly as they came. The airlock sealed, and the veil shuddered free of the frigate's clamps. Elias let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Close one," he muttered. Behind him, Salira emerged from the shadows, her face pale but steady. Kale clung to her leg. "You didn't have to," she began softly. "Yes, I did," Elias interrupted gruffly. "You're my problem now, and I don't leave my problems for the wolves." For the first time, Salira's lips curved into the faintest smile. Elias sat alone in the cockpit, a bottle of cheap synth whiskey balanced precariously between his fingers. Outside, the stars streaked by in cold silence, as though they too were watching, waiting. His console blinked with a new message, one that had arrived moments after the Vigilant Star departed. "UNSC Command, Captain Elias Rourke. Surveillance shows you failed to report 2 alien stowaways aboard Astral Veil. Cooperation required. Full amnesty and bounty payment offered in exchange for compliance. Elias stared at the screen. His jaw worked as old instincts warred inside him. A bounty large enough to buy a new ship, a quiet life. No more rust. No more patching life support with duct tape and prayers. And all it would cost was 2 lives. 2 alien lives. Behind him, soft footsteps. You're thinking about it. He didn't turn. He didn't have to. Salira stood in the doorway, her silvery skin catching the dim glow of the console. Kale clung to her tunic, eyes wide and unblinking. Thinking about what? Elias asked, his voice flat. Selling us. Her words weren't accusatory, just resigned. Elias swirled the whiskey, watching the liquid slosh like molten amber. Don't flatter yourself, he said bitterly. It's not about you. It's about survival. Out here, you don't get many second chances. Salira's bioluminescent markings flared faintly, a ripple of sadness, or perhaps understanding. You would survive, but would you live? Her words hit deeper than he expected. Elias slammed the bottle down and stood, towering over her. You don't know a damn thing about me, he snapped. I know enough. Salira's voice was quiet, but steady. You're a soldier without a war, a captain without a crew, a man who gave up long ago, but hasn't found the courage to let go. Kale pressed closer to her leg, frightened. Elias caught the movement, and something in his chest twisted. He remembered another boy years ago. A colony raid gone bad. A child left crying in the rubble as Elias's unit moved on, without looking back. Damn it, Elias whispered, his hands balling into fists. The console pinged again. A countdown appeared. Bounty offer expires. 10 o'clock. 10 minutes to decide. 10 minutes to choose between wealth and redemption. Salira reached out, her delicate fingers brushing Elias's sleeve. We don't ask for your life, she said. Only a chance for ours. Elias looked at her hand, then at Kale's wide, fearful eyes. He saw no enemies there. No monsters. Only a mother desperate to keep her child safe. And in that moment, Elias Rourke, once a decorated UNSC captain, now a washed-up traitor, made his choice. He turned back to the console and smashed the comlink button with his fist. UNSC command, this is Captain Rourke. A crisp voice answered almost immediately. Go ahead, Captain. Have you secured the targets? Elias's lip curled into a snarl. You can take your bounty and shove it. A pause. Repeat that, Captain. I said shove it. Elias roared. These 2 aren't your enemies. Hell, they're not even soldiers. You want blood? Come and get it yourself. Otherwise, stay the hell out of my skies. He slammed the comm channel closed before the operator could reply. Salira exhaled, her bioluminescence glowing faintly brighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Why? She asked softly. Elias turned to her, his face hard but his eyes strangely alive. Because I'm not the bastard I thought I was. He walked past her, heading for the engine room. Now hold on tight. We're about to make a jump no sane captain would attempt. The Astral Veil's engines roared to life as Elias plotted an unregistered course, straight through an unstable nebula known for frying patrol scanners. Rourke, Salira said from behind, her voice almost a whisper. We won't forget this. Don't bother, Elias said, his hands dancing over the controls. Just promise me the kid gets to see a sky where he doesn't have to hide. Salira's smile was faint but real. I promise. The ship shuddered violently as they jumped, stars melting into streaks of blue and white. Behind them, UNSC sensors lit up, but too late. The Astral Veil was gone. For the first time in years, Elias felt the stirrings of something he thought long dead. Hope. The Astral Veil limped through the outer reaches of the nebula, its hull scorched and engines whining in protest. Sparks occasionally danced across panels in the cockpit, but Elias barely noticed. He was alive. They were alive. And for the first time in years, that meant something. Salira stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on Kale's shoulder. The boy's bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly, brighter now, as though sensing the shift in the air. "Will they follow?" Salira asked softly. Elias shook his head, eyes scanning the NAV charts. "Not through that storm. UNSC patrols won't risk frying their precious sensors for one rusty freighter." He leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhaustion catching up with him all at once. But beneath the fatigue, a strange calm had settled in his chest. Kale tugged at his sleeve. Elias looked down to see the boy holding out a small, worn trinket, a carved figurine shaped like a starship. "For me?" Elias asked, raising an eyebrow. Kale nodded solemnly. Elias took the figurine carefully, turning it over in his calloused hands. It was crudely made, but there was care in every line. "Guess that makes us shipmates, huh?" Kale's smile was small but genuine. Later, as the veil drifted through quiet space, Salira found Elias in the engine bay. He was elbow-deep in wiring, muttering curses at stubborn conduits. "You could have turned us in," she said quietly. "Could have," Elias agreed without looking up. "You didn't." Elias set down his tools and wiped grime from his hands. He looked at her, really looked this time, not as a liability or a threat, but as a person. "Guess I'm tired of being the guy who survives by leaving others behind." Salira's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then what will you be?" He hesitated, staring at the floor as if the answer might be written there. "Maybe someone worth a damn." The two stood in silence for a long moment, the hum of the ship their only companion. Finally, Elias broke it. "Look, I don't know what your plans are, where you and the kid will go once we find a safe port. But if you need a place to stay a while..." Salira tilted her head. "You'd let us stay?" Elias ran a hand through his hair, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm not saying I'd make a great host, but this old rust bucket could use a few more hands, and Kale's already a better mechanic than half my old crew." Salira chuckled softly, a sound like wind chimes in a warm breeze. "Perhaps we will stay. For a while." Days later, the astral veil slipped into orbit around a quiet frontier world, a place far from the UNSC's reach, where no one asked questions, and refugees could start over. From the viewport, Kale pressed his small hands against the glass, his eyes wide as he saw a sky filled with twin suns and green oceans. His glowing markings brightened in excitement. "Beautiful," Salira whispered. Elias stood behind them, arms crossed. "Yeah," he said gruffly. "Not bad for a rock at the edge of nowhere." But deep down he felt it too, the tug of possibility, the faint spark of a future. As the landing thrusters engaged, Salira turned to Elias. "You saved us, Captain Rourke." He shook his head with a faint smirk. "Nah, maybe you saved me." Their eyes met, not with romance, not yet, but with the fragile beginnings of trust and something deeper, unspoken. Outside, the world waited. The astral veil touched down softly, its engines sighing to a halt. For the first time in years, Elias Rourke stepped out onto a planet not as a fugitive or a mercenary, but as a man with people depending on him. Kale grabbed his hand, unafraid now. "Captain?" the boy asked in a small voice. "Yeah, kid." "Where are we going?" Elias looked to the horizon, twin suns blazing in a sky of endless blue. "Forward," he said simply. "Always forward." Together, they walked into the light.